The son of the Mongol Emperor was hiding inside a metal tube. Not on a battlefield, not behind fortress walls. Inside a hollow bronze cylinder, arrows slammed against its surface. Metal rang in the jungle, soldiers screamed, horses panicked. Mud swallowed boots, branches whipped across armor. The future ruler of the world's largest empire was being carried by 4 exhausted guards running through Vietnamese forest trails. Desperate not to die, this was not supposed to happen. Just weeks earlier, this man commanded hundreds of thousands of troops. He led the greatest military machine on earth, the Mongol Empire. An empire that had crushed China, flattened Persia, burned cities across Central Asia, destroyed kingdoms in Russia and Eastern Europe. No army had ever stopped them. No wall had ever held them. Their cavalry moved faster than storms. Their generals believed themselves chosen by heaven. Their enemies usually surrendered or vanished, but now, the Mongol prince was fleeing. His armor discarded, his banners gone, his men scattered. Each step deeper into the jungle felt like walking into a grave. Arrows came again. One struck the bronze shell. Another glanced off its rim. Inside the tube, the prince curled tighter. He could hear nothing clearly, only vibration, only chaos, only the pounding of his own heart. He had crossed deserts. He had crossed rivers. He had conquered cities. Yet here, in a humid green maze at the edge of Southeast Asia, he had become prey. Someone was hunting him. Someone relentless. Someone who did not stop. Someone who knew every ridge, every hidden path, every narrow pass through the mountains. The Mongol prince whispered to his guards, "Faster, run, do not slow down. If they catch us, we are dead." Behind him, somewhere in the trees, drums echoed, not loud, not constant, short bursts, signals. Vietnamese war calls, the sound of pursuit. The Mongols had a word for this feeling, the moment when victory disappears. The moment when the hunted becomes the hunter. They called it the shadow of death. The guards slipped on wet roots. One man fell. Another dragged him up. Blood streaked down someone's leg. They did not stop. They could not stop. They knew what followed. The Vietnamese did not chase like normal armies. They did not march in formation. They did not announce their attacks. They emerged from fog, from trees, from ravines. They struck, then vanished, and among them was one man. The Mongols had begun to fear more than the others. They said he did not feel pain. They said he never tired. They said he chased enemies for days, without rest. They said he fought like 10 men. They said he moved like smoke. They said he had once stood in the road, lost in thought, so deeply focused that a spear driven through his leg did not make him flinch. They said he had been a farmer. They said he had woven baskets. His name was Pham Ngu Lao, and right now, he was closing in. Branches snapped. A whistle cut the air. Another arrow struck bronze. The prince screamed. Inside the tube, he could smell fear. He could taste metal. He could feel the heat of tropical breath. He was no longer a conqueror. He was cargo, carried through mud, through vines, through panic. This was the same empire that once terrified the world. This was the same dynasty that made kings kneel. This was the same army that believed no nation could resist. Yet here, they were running because of one man, because of a general who refused to let them escape, because of a warrior who believed that retreating enemies must be destroyed, because of a commander who had spent his life preparing for this moment. But this story does not begin with a Mongol prince in a metal tube. It begins decades earlier, in a small farming village, with a boy born into poverty, a boy with no noble blood, no famous ancestors, no royal protection, only fields, only dirt, only calloused hands. He was born in 1255 in Phuong village, northern Vietnam. His family were farmers, rice growers, day laborers. They owned no land worth mentioning. They held no official titles. In a society dominated by royal clans, he was invisible. But even as a child, he was different, stronger than others his age. Quieter, more focused, he watched soldiers train. He memorized weapon movements. He listened to travelers tell stories of war. He read whatever military texts he could find. He dreamed of honor. He dreamed of serving his country. He dreamed of becoming a general, like many young men of his time. He went to the capital to compete in martial examinations, to prove himself, to earn rank, to change his destiny. But talent alone was not enough. Politics ruled everything. One mistake destroyed his chances. During an archery test, he ignored the target. Instead, he shot down a ceremonial banner. It was meant to show skill. It was interpreted as disrespect. He was beaten, disqualified, publicly humiliated, and sent home. He returned to his village in shame. No title, no position, no future. So he did what he could. He wove baskets by the roadside, day after day. Villagers passed him. Children pointed. Some whispered. The young man who dreamed of command now bent over bamboo strips. But while his hands worked, his mind fought wars. He studied formations. He imagined cavalry charges. He rehearsed counterattacks. He trained his body in secret. He lifted stones. He practiced with spears. He read military manuals by oil lamp. He prepared, because deep inside, he believed something. He believed opportunity would come, and when it did, he would be ready. That opportunity arrived when Vietnam faced extinction. The Mongols were coming, for the second time. Their first invasion had failed. They returned with vengeance. Hundreds of thousands of troops, infantry from the north, naval forces from the south. The Mongol prince Toktoa led them. He expected quick victory. He expected submission. Vietnam prepared for survival. Its greatest commander, Tran Dynasty, rode through the countryside to inspect defenses. His procession passed through Phuong. Soldiers cleared the road. Villagers stepped aside. Everyone moved. Everyone except one man. Pham Ngu Lao remained seated, still weaving, lost in thought. A guard shouted. No response. Another guard struck him with a spear. Blood flowed down his leg. Still no reaction. Pham Ngu Lao did not cry out. He did not fall. He did not look up. His mind was somewhere else. He was calculating how to defeat Mongol cavalry. Tran Dynasty stopped. He stepped from his horse. He studied the young man. Not the blood, not the wound, the focus. He ordered the guards to back away. He asked a simple question. Why did you not move? Pham Ngu Lao bowed. He said he had been thinking about battle strategy. He said he had been imagining how to stop the Mongols. Tran Dynasty recognized something rare, a battlefield mind, a warrior spirit. He had found his weapon. Pham Ngu Lao was brought into the army. He faced suspicion. Nobles mocked him. Elite guards challenged him. He trained for months, then returned and defeated them all, over 100 palace soldiers, single-handedly. From that day forward, No one doubted him again. He built his own unit. He trained them brutally. He lived with them, ate with them, slept beside them. He treated soldiers like sons. They followed him like family. He fell in love with a princess, but marriage required glory. Only great war merit could bridge his low birth, so he made a vow. He would earn victory or die trying. Then the Mongols arrived. Hanoi fell. Vietnam retreated. The countryside burned. But Vietnam did not surrender. They waited. They bled the enemy. They destroyed supplies. They attacked when heat and disease weakened Mongol ranks. Pham Ngu Lao led assaults at Hanoi. At Chuong Duong, he smashed Mongol river defenses. He helped recapture the capital. Then he pursued the retreating prince. Through forests, through mountains, across rivers, for hundreds of miles. And now we return to the jungle, to the bronze tube, to the fleeing emperor's son, to arrows striking metal, to soldiers screaming, to a general who refused to stop. Pham Ngu Lao emerged from the trees. His men closed in. The Mongol prince escaped that day, barely, but his army did not. They would be destroyed again. 3 years later, they would return once more. And they would be annihilated on the Bachdang River. An empire would drown. A small nation would survive. And the basket weaver would become a legend. This is not just a story of war. It is a story of failure, of patience, of discipline, of transformation, of how an ordinary man brought an empire to its knees. This is the story of Pham Ngu Lao. To understand Pham Ngu Lao, you first have to understand his enemy, because he did not rise in a quiet age. He rose in the shadow of the largest empire the world had ever seen. The Mongol Empire. By the mid-13th century, the Mongols controlled more land than any power in history, from Korea to Hungary, from Siberia to the Persian Gulf. They had destroyed entire civilizations. They conquered China. They erased Baghdad. They crushed Russian principalities. Their armies moved faster than anyone believed possible. Their generals practiced psychological warfare before they ever raised a sword. Cities often surrendered. Just from hearing their name, to the Mongols, every border was temporary. Every kingdom was a future province. And now, their eyes turned south, toward a narrow strip of land, along the edge of Southeast Asia, Vietnam. In the 13th century, Vietnam was called Dai Viet, a small agricultural kingdom, rich in rivers, dense with jungle, protected by mountains in the north and ocean in the east. Its people were farmers, fishermen, craftsmen, not conquerors, not empire builders. They did not invade other nations. They defended their own. Dai Viet was ruled by the Tran Dynasty. Unlike many royal houses, the Tran did something unusual. They trained their princes for war. Royal sons learned archery. They studied cavalry tactics. They memorized military texts. They fought beside common soldiers. Power stayed inside the family. Command never drifted to outsiders. It was a system designed for survival, and it worked. But it also meant something else. If you were not born into the royal clan, your chances of rising the military were almost zero. Talent alone was not enough. Blood mattered. And into this world, in the year 1255, a boy named Pham Ngu Lao was born. He came into life in Phu Ung village, a quiet farming community. His family owned no land worth recording. They had no connections, no political protection. His father worked the fields. His mother carried water. Pham Ngu Lao grew up among rice paddies and buffalo paths. He learned hard labor early. He lifted baskets before he lifted weapons. He planted crops before he practiced spear work. But even as a child, people noticed something different. He was unusually strong, quiet, observant. While other boys wrestled, Pham Ngu Lao watched soldiers. While others played, he studied horse movements. He listened when traveling merchants spoke of war. He memorized stories of generals. He borrowed military scrolls from anyone who would lend them. He trained his body in isolation. He trained his mind in silence. He did not dream of wealth. He dreamed of command. He dreamed of defending his country. He dreamed of becoming a general. And like many ambitious young men, he eventually left home. He traveled to the capital. He entered the royal martial examinations. These tests were brutal. Candidates were judged on archery, swordsmanship, physical endurance, strategic knowledge. Success meant honor, rank, a future. Failure meant obscurity. Pham Ngu Lao performed well, too well, young, powerful, confident. In one moment that would change his life, he ignored the official target. Instead, he shot down a ceremonial banner. It was meant as a display of skill. It was taken as arrogance. Worse, it was interpreted as disrespect toward the throne. Guards seized him. Officials ordered punishment. Pham Ngu Lao was beaten publicly, stripped of his candidacy, humiliated in front of nobles and rivals. His military dream collapsed in a single afternoon. He was sent away. No rank, no title, no chance of appeal, just shame. He returned to Chuong, back to farming roads, back to bamboo tools, back to anonymity. He began weaving baskets by the roadside, day after day. People walked past him. Some recognized him, some whispered, some laughed quietly. The young man who once stood before royal examiners now bent over bamboo strips, but defeat did not break him. It refined him. He did not complain. He did not beg for sympathy. Instead, he disappeared into discipline. At night, by oil lamp, he read military manuals. He studied Chinese strategy texts. He analyzed cavalry formations. He memorized battle logistics. He practiced spear techniques until his arms shook. He carried stones up hills to build endurance. He trained alone in empty fields. He hardened himself while weaving baskets by day. He fought wars in his mind. He rehearsed Mongol tactics. He designed ambush scenarios. He calculated terrain advantages. He prepared. Because deep inside, Pham Ngu Lao believed something simple. He believed failure was temporary, and destiny required preparation. Then rumors began spreading. The Mongols were returning. The first invasion had failed. Now they were coming back. With far greater force, the Prince Toktoa would lead them. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers, infantry from the north, naval units from the south. Their goal was clear: erase Dai Viet. Turn it into a Mongol province. Vietnam mobilized. Villages prepared for evacuation. Bridges were mapped for destruction. Fields were marked for burning. The Tran Dynasty activated its war system, and the supreme commander, Tran Hung Dao, rode across the countryside inspecting defenses. His entourage passed through Chuong. Soldiers cleared the road. Villagers stepped aside. Everyone moved. Everyone except one man. Pham Ngu Lao remained seated, still weaving, lost in thought. A guard shouted. No response. Another guard kicked dirt toward him. Nothing. Finally, a soldier thrust a spear into his leg. Blood flowed. Yet Pham Ngu Lao did not cry out. He did not stand. He did not react. His hands kept working. His eyes stayed distant. His mind was calculating battle formations. Tran Hung Dao noticed. He ordered the procession to stop. He approached the young man. He studied the wound. He studied the posture. He studied the silence. Then he asked a question. Why did you not move? Pham Ngu Lao bowed. He apologized. He said he had been thinking about how to defeat Mongol cavalry. He said his mind had been occupied with strategy. Tran Hung Dao recognized something rare. This was not stubbornness. This was focus. This was the concentration of a battlefield mind. Tran Hung Dao ordered medics to treat the wound. He invited Pham Ngu Lao to speak further. They discussed tactics. They discussed supply routes. They discussed defensive formations. The farmer answered fluently. His ideas were sharp, his logic precise. Tran Hung Dao did not hesitate. He brought Pham Ngu Lao into the army. It was an extraordinary decision. Pham Ngu Lao had no noble blood, no family status, no official rank, but Tran Hung Dao valued ability over lineage. Not everyone agreed. Palace guards mocked him. Aristocratic officers dismissed him. They saw only a farmer. They saw only dirty sandals. They challenged his authority. They demanded tests. Pham Ngu Lao accepted. He asked for time. He returned to his village. For 3 months, he trained without pause. He lifted heavier stones. He refined his strikes. He strengthened his lungs. He sharpened his reflexes. He prepared for confrontation. When he returned to the capital, a crowd gathered. The palace guards surrounded him. They expected an easy humiliation. They attacked together. Pham Ngu Lao moved like water. He struck with precision. He flowed through opponents. He dropped men with controlled force, one by one. Over 100 guards fell. The courtyard went silent. From that moment forward, no one questioned him again. Tran Hung Dao gave him command. Pham Ngu Lao began building his own unit. He trained soldiers harshly, but he lived among them. He ate what they ate. He slept where they slept. He treated them like sons. They followed him with absolute loyalty. And then, he met Princess An Nguyen. She was unlike other royal women. She trained with weapons. She rode horses. She commanded naval troops. They fought together. They trained together. They grew close. But tradition stood between them. Royal blood could not marry commoners. There was only one way forward: war merit, great victories. Pham Ngu Lao understood. If he wanted honor, if he wanted love, if he wanted legitimacy, he would have to earn it on the battlefield. The Mongols were already marching, and Pham Ngu Lao was ready. Could a disgraced farmer become a general? The answer would be written in blood. Pham Ngu Lao entered the capital as a stranger. No banners followed him. No family name opened doors. He walked through palace gates, wearing the dust of countryside roads. To the nobles of Dai Viet, he was invisible. To the elite palace guards, he was an insult. These men were born into rank. Their fathers were generals. Their grandfathers had served kings. They trained since childhood inside fortified courtyards. They wore fine armor. They carried ceremonial blades. And now they were told that a farmer would command beside them. They watched Pham Ngu Lao closely. They noticed his simple clothes, his quiet manner, his village accent. They whispered among themselves, "Who is this nobody? Why does the commander trust him?" What has he done to earn this place? They obeyed orders. But they did not respect him. Not yet. Pham Ngu Lao understood. He did not argue. He did not demand recognition. He trained. He studied palace formations. He memorized guard rotations. He observed each soldier's strengths and weaknesses. He learned who relied on brute force, who favored speed, who hesitated under pressure. He waited because he knew something they did not. Respect is not given, it is taken. The nobles soon made their move. They approached the court. They requested a formal challenge. They claimed the new recruit was unproven. They proposed a test of combat, a demonstration, a public match. They intended to humiliate him, to expose the farmer. To restore their sense of superiority, Pham Ngu Lao accepted immediately. But he added one condition. He would not fight them one by one. He would face them all. At once, the palace guards laughed. They thought he was arrogant. They thought he was reckless. They agreed. Before the match, Pham Ngu Lao asked for permission to return home. He said he wished to see his mother. The court allowed it. He disappeared for 3 months. During that time, he trained harder than ever. He ran barefoot through fields. He climbed hills carrying stone blocks. He practiced spear drills until dawn. He sparred with anyone willing. He strengthened tendons. He refined timing. He built explosive endurance. Villagers saw him at night, moving like a shadow through tall grass. They heard strikes echo against wooden posts. They watched him bleed and continue. He was preparing for something final. When he returned to the capital, the courtyard was crowded. Officials gathered. Nobles leaned forward. Soldiers formed a circle. They expected entertainment. They expected a lesson. Pham Ngu Lao stepped into the open space. The guards advanced together. More than 100 men, trained fighters, armed. They surrounded him. For a moment, everything was still. Then the attack came. Pham Ngu Lao moved. He did not rush. He did not flinch. He flowed. His footwork was precise. His strikes were economical. He broke grips, redirected force, dropped opponents with joint locks and controlled blows. Men fell. Others rushed in. He pivoted, countered, elbow strikes, sweeps, rapid transitions. The crowd fell silent. One by one, elite guards collapsed. Some unconscious, some unable to rise. The fight ended in minutes. Over 100 soldiers lay scattered across the courtyard. Pham Ngu Lao stood alone, breathing steady. Not a single man had touched him. In that moment, his status changed. The nobles stopped whispering. The guards lowered their eyes. Tran Dynasty nodded. Pham Ngu Lao had proven himself. But victory in a courtyard is not victory in war. He was given command of his own unit, and he began building something different. He did not treat soldiers as expendable tools. He lived among them. He ate the same rations. He slept on the same ground. He carried wounded men himself. He taught them personally. He trained them relentlessly, but he also protected them fiercely. He called them his sons. They called him father. The unit became known as the Father-Son Army. Their loyalty was absolute. They did not fight for pay. They fought for each other. They fought for him. They trained in rivers. They trained in forests. They practiced night maneuvers. They learned silent movement. They learned coordinated assaults. They learned endurance beyond normal limits. They became faster than cavalry scouts, stronger than standard infantry. They moved like a single organism. Other commanders noticed. Tran Dynasty took interest. He gave Pham Ngu Lao more responsibility, more autonomy, more trust. And during this time, Pham Ngu Lao met Princess Hanoi. She was not what the court expected of royalty. She trained with weapons, she rode horses, she commanded naval units. She sparred with soldiers, she refused embroidery lessons. She preferred drills. She was strong-willed, direct, unimpressed by titles. She noticed Pham Ngu Lao's discipline, his restraint, his leadership. They trained together, they discussed strategy. They rode patrols, they became companions. Then something deeper formed. They fell in love, but tradition was merciless. Princesses married inside royal bloodlines. Political alliances were sacred. Pham Ngu Lao was a commoner, no matter his skill. No matter his victories in training, he had no claim, no right. There was only one path forward, great war merit. Only battlefield glory could erase birth. Only national salvation could justify exception. Pham Ngu Lao understood. Victory would be his dowry. If he wanted her hand, he would have to defeat an empire. He did not complain. He did not protest tradition. He sharpened his weapons. The Mongols were already advancing. Their banners moved south. Their supply columns stretched across valleys. Their cavalry scouted Vietnamese borders. The war was coming. Pham Ngu Lao gathered his men. He told them nothing of romance, nothing of ambition. He spoke only of duty, of homeland, of survival. He knew what awaited them. The Mongols had destroyed cities larger than his entire country. They had erased kingdoms. They believed Dai Viet would fall in weeks. Pham Ngu Lao looked at his soldiers, farm boys, fishermen, woodcutters, men who had never seen snow or deserts, men who had never fought steppe cavalry, but they trusted him. And he would not fail them, because this was no longer about proving himself. It was about protecting everything he loved. The farmer had become a weapon, the outsider had become a commander, and the Mongol Empire was about to learn that Dai Viet was not defenseless. Victory had become his dowry, and war was his only path forward. In early 1285, the Mongol Empire returned, not with warnings, not with diplomacy. They came with 500,000 soldiers, cavalry from the northern steppes, infantry columns stretching beyond the horizon, supply trains carrying months of provisions. Their commander was Prince Toc Toa, known in Vietnamese history as Thot Hon, son of the Mongol Emperor. He had conquered cities larger than Hanoi. He had crushed kingdoms. He believed Dai Viet would be no different. The invasion began like a natural disaster. Villages burned, fields were trampled. Refugees fled south. Scouts reported Mongol banners appearing on every ridge line. Vietnamese resistance units were pushed back. Outnumbered, outgunned, outpaced. Within weeks, the capital fell. Thang Long, modern-day Hanoi, was occupied. Mongol standards flew over Vietnamese palaces. Toc Toa declared victory. He believed the campaign was nearly over. But the Vietnamese leadership had already made their move. They abandoned the city. They withdrew their armies. They evacuated civilians. They destroyed food stores. They emptied wells. They vanished into forests and river systems. It was not defeat. It was strategy. They called it empty house, scorched earth. They denied the Mongols everything. No shelter, no supplies, no stable ground. Toc Toa now controlled the capital with nothing in it. His army sat inside a dead city. Outside, Heat rose, rain began. Disease followed. Mongol soldiers accustomed to cold grasslands suffocated in tropical humidity. Horses weakened, food ran low. Mosquito-borne illnesses spread through camps. The longer they stayed, the weaker they became. This was when Tran Hung Dao gave the order. Counterattack. Pham Ngu Lao was ready. His father-son army moved first. Their target, Ham Tu, a fortified river position controlling critical supply routes. The Mongols held it with seasoned troops. They believed water-based defense made it secure. Pham Ngu Lao disagreed. Under cover of mist and early morning fog, Vietnamese boats slipped downstream. They moved silently, paddles wrapped in cloth. Armor blackened to avoid reflection. When Mongol sentries realized what was happening, it was already too late. Pham Ngu Lao led the assault personally. He boarded enemy vessels. He cut through defenders. His men followed like shadows. Close-quarter combat favored the Vietnamese. Mongol cavalry doctrine meant nothing on narrow decks. Spears clashed. Blades flashed. Men fell into the river. Ham Tu collapsed in hours. Thousands of Mongol soldiers were killed or scattered. The first major Vietnamese victory had arrived. Word spread rapidly. Morale surged. But Pham Ngu Lao did not stop. He moved immediately toward Chuong Duong. This was no outpost. This was the main Mongol river base. Their fleet was anchored there. Their supply network depended on it. If Chuong Duong fell, the occupation of Hanoi would become impossible. The Mongols fortified the river with chained ships. They stacked vessels into floating barricades. They mounted archers on elevated decks. They believed no force could break through. Pham Ngu Lao studied their formation. He waited for night. Then he changed tactics. Instead of frontal assault, he ordered fire ships. Vietnamese soldiers packed boats with combustibles. They released them downstream with the current. The burning vessels slammed into Mongol formations. Panic erupted. As flames spread across decks, Pham Ngu Lao's troops surged forward. They boarded enemy ships amid smoke and chaos. Hand-to-hand fighting erupted across the river. The father-son army fought as a unit. Each man covered the next. They moved together. They struck together. Mongol defenders lost cohesion. Some jumped into the river. Others burned where they stood. By sunrise, Chuong Duong was gone. The Mongol river fleet lay in ruins. With Ham Tu and Chuong Duong destroyed, the Mongols lost their logistical backbone. Hanoi became indefensible. Vietnamese forces advanced from multiple directions. Pham Ngu Lao spearheaded the assault. Toc Dua ordered evacuation. His army began pulling north. Thang Long was liberated. The capital returned to Vietnamese control. But Tran Hung Dao was not satisfied. Victory inside the city meant nothing if the Mongol army escaped intact. He ordered pursuit, relentless pursuit. And he assigned that mission to Pham Ngu Lao. This was not a battle, it was a hunt. The Mongols retreated through jungle corridors, through mountain passes, through narrow valleys. Vietnamese units shadowed them constantly. They attacked supply wagons. They ambushed rear guards. They harassed scouts. They cut down stragglers. Pham Ngu Lao used terrain like a weapon. He set traps in ravines. He collapsed slopes. He positioned archers in treetops. His soldiers appeared and vanished. The Mongols could not rest, could not regroup, could not predict where the next strike would come from. 2 Mongol generals were killed during the retreat. Entire detachments disappeared in forest engagements. Morale shattered. Toktoa realized the campaign was lost. He ordered full withdrawal toward China, but Pham Ngu Lao stayed close. His men ran for days. They crossed rivers without bridges. They climbed cliffs barefoot. They tracked enemy movement by broken branches and trampled grass. Toktoa was nearly captured. His rearguard was destroyed. Arrows rained down on his escort. In desperation, his officers devised a final escape. They constructed a bronze tube, a portable metal cylinder. They placed the prince inside. They carried it through jungle paths. While arrows struck harmlessly against the shell, the heir of the Mongol Empire fled Vietnam hidden inside a metal container. It was survival, but it was humiliation. Pham Ngu Lao watched the retreat from a ridgeline. He had driven the Mongols out, but their leader had escaped. The war was over. For now, Vietnam celebrated. The Mongol Empire had been defeated, against impossible odds. A farming nation had expelled the most powerful military on earth. Pham Ngu Lao returned as a hero, but he did not celebrate long. He knew empires do not forget humiliation. They regroup. They adapt. They return. And he was right. The Mongols would come back. Stronger, angrier, more determined than ever. This was only the beginning. The Mongol Empire did not accept defeat. 3 years after their retreat, they returned. In 1288, Prince Toktoa marched south once again, but this time he did not come blindly. He came prepared. He brought new commanders. He brought reinforced cavalry. He brought a massive naval fleet. And most importantly, he brought food. Thousands of transport ships loaded with rice, grain, and dried meat followed behind the army. This time, they would not starve. This time, they would not retreat. This time, Dai Viet would be erased. Toktoa believed logistics would secure victory. Tran Dynasty saw logistics as weakness. The Vietnamese command allowed Mongol forces to enter the country. They withdrew again. They abandoned cities. They repeated the scorched earth strategy. But this time, they did something different. They ignored the Mongol army. Instead, they hunted the food. The supply fleet sailed separately from the main force. It was slow, heavy, vulnerable. Tran Dynasty led the ambush. Vietnamese naval units emerged from island channels near Van Done. They attacked the transport convoy. They burned ships. They captured cargo. They sank everything they could not carry. Within days, the Mongol supply fleet ceased to exist. News reached Toktoa's headquarters like a thunderbolt. 500,000 soldiers with nothing to eat. The Mongol army advanced into northern Vietnam only to find empty villages and stripped fields. They consumed emergency rations, then horses, then leather equipment. Sickness spread. Desertions increased. Morale collapsed. Toktoa realized he had been baited. He ordered immediate withdrawal, but by now, Tran Dynasty had already sealed the exits, and Pham Ngu Lao held the gates. While Mongol forces attempted to regroup, Pham Ngu Lao deployed his father-son army across mountain passes and forest corridors. He blocked all land routes. His units occupied ridgelines. They fortified choke points. They harassed scouting parties. They launched night attacks. They made every road feel haunted. Mongol messengers disappeared. Advance units vanished. Entire platoons failed to return. Toktoa attempted to escape north by land. Pham Ngu Lao closed the passes. He tried alternate valleys. They were already occupied. He sent cavalry probes. They were ambushed. He had one remaining option, the river. the Bach Dang. This was the shortest route home, but it was also the most dangerous. Tran Hung Dao had chosen this battlefield carefully. He had studied the tides. He had consulted fishermen. He had mapped currents. He had ordered massive hardwood stakes carved, sharpened, and reinforced with iron tips. They were planted beneath the river at precise angles, hidden during high tide. Exposed when waters receded, the trap was ancient. But the execution was perfect. On the morning of April 9, 1288, the Mongol fleet entered the Bach Dang River, hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers. They believed they were escaping. They did not know they were entering a grave. Vietnamese forces staged light resistance. They allowed the fleet to move deeper upstream. They retreated deliberately. They pretended to falter. The Mongols advanced aggressively. They pursued. They crossed the invisible line. Then the tide changed. Water levels dropped rapidly. The river revealed its teeth. Wooden stakes erupted from beneath the surface. Hull after hull slammed into sharpened timber. Ships ruptured. Boats capsized. Men were thrown into the water. Chaos consumed the fleet. Vietnamese war drums echoed from both banks. Fire rafts drifted downstream. Archers emerged from hidden positions. Flaming arrows streaked across the sky. Pham Ngu Lao arrived with his elite units. His boats were lighter, faster. They weaved between wrecked Mongol vessels. His men boarded stranded ships. They fought at close quarters. The Mongols were trapped. No retreat, no maneuver, no cavalry. Just water, fire, and steel. Admiral Omar, commander of the Mongol Navy, attempted to organize resistance. His flagship was rammed. He was pulled from the river and captured. Surrounding vessels surrendered. Others burned. Those who tried to swim were cut down by shoreline units. The Bach Dang became a killing field. By sunset, the Mongol fleet had ceased to exist. Thousands drowned. Thousands were captured. Only fragments escaped. Toktoa fled again, this time without ceremony, without honor. He abandoned troops. He discarded equipment. He ran through mountain trails with a handful of bodyguards. Pham Ngu Lao pursued relentlessly. Arrows followed him through forest paths. Several escorts fell. Toktoa crossed the border barely alive. He would never return. The Mongol Empire had been annihilated in Vietnam. Not by superior numbers, not by technology, but by strategy, preparation, discipline, and patience. An empire had drowned in a river. The world's greatest military machine had been broken by fishermen, farmers, and jungle fighters. Pham Ngu Lao stood on the riverbank, watching smoke rise from burning wreckage. He had achieved what few men in history ever would. He had helped defeat the Mongols twice. He had protected his homeland. But victory did not make him arrogant. It made him quieter. He returned to his soldiers. He checked the wounded. He ensured prisoners were treated humanely. He did not celebrate. He prepared for whatever came next. Because warriors like Pham Ngu Lao understand something others do not. Victory is temporary. Duty is permanent. When the Mongol Empire finally retreated beyond Vietnam's borders, the country exhaled. Villages were rebuilt. Fields were replanted. Families returned to burned foundations and began again. For the first time in decades, there was silence. Pham Ngu Lao did not retire. He did not ask for estates. He did not seek political power. He remained what he had always been. A soldier. The wars against the Mongols had hardened him. But they had not changed him. he still ate with his men. He still walked among camps at night. He still inspected training fields personally. He still remembered every officer's name. He still listened. Victory had not made him distant. It made him more careful, because peace, he understood, is fragile. And enemies do not disappear, they wait. Soon enough, trouble came from the west. Laotian forces began probing Vietnamese borders. Small raids turned into organized incursions. Villages were harassed. Trade routes were disrupted. The royal court debated. Pham Ngu Lao was given command. He marched into mountainous terrain unfamiliar to Mongol cavalry, dense forests, steep passes, narrow valleys. His tactics changed. He divided units into mobile columns. He used elevation. He attacked from above. He moved at night. He forced engagements only on favorable ground. The Laotian forces never saw full battle lines. They encountered shadows, sudden strikes, then silence. Within weeks, resistance collapsed. The invaders withdrew. No prolonged campaign. No excessive bloodshed. Just controlled pressure until surrender. Next came Khampa in the south. Khampa was not weak. They had experienced commanders. They understood coastal warfare. They knew jungle terrain. But Pham Ngu Lao did not fight them the way he fought the Mongols. There was no annihilation. No dramatic naval engagements. Instead, he applied psychological warfare. He maintained perfect discipline among his troops. No looting. No civilian harm. His army repaired bridges. They helped farmers harvest. They shared rations with villages. Local populations began to cooperate. Information flowed freely. Khampa commanders found themselves isolated, surrounded by hostile territory, facing an enemy that refused brutality. Many surrendered without major confrontation. Others withdrew. The border stabilized. Pham Ngu Lao returned again, victorious. Again. By now, the pattern was clear. Every campaign he commanded ended the same way. Success. No defeats, no retreats, no broken units. Historians would later describe his record with 4 simple words: unbeaten in every battle. But numbers never tell the full story. His greatest strength was not tactical brilliance. It was trust. His soldiers followed him because he shared danger. Because he carried wounded men on his own back. Because he punished officers who abused recruits. Because he rewarded courage quietly. Because he never ordered men forward from behind. He always led from the front. They did not fight because he was their general. They fought because he was their father. In camp, he taught reading. He discussed strategy. He corrected posture. He listened to complaints. He allowed soldiers to grieve fallen comrades. He understood that morale is built in moments between battles. He believed discipline and compassion were not opposites. They were partners. Pham Ngu Lao also wrote poetry. Not elaborate court verse, not romantic epics. Short reflections, compressed philosophy. One poem survives to this day. It is called Thuet Hoi, loosely translated. Holding spear, guarding rivers and mountains through many years. My army's spirit roars louder than the stars. A man has not fulfilled his debt to honor and country, and still feels ashamed when hearing of ancient heroes. These lines reveal something important. Pham Ngu Lao did not consider himself complete, despite victories, despite rank, despite national fame. He believed he still owed his country. He compared himself to legendary figures like Zhuge Liang and felt inadequate. It was not false humility. It was internal pressure. a warrior measuring himself against eternity. This mindset kept him sharp. It prevented complacency. It drove continuous preparation. He trained even during peace. He reviewed defenses. He updated contingency plans. He assumed threats would return. This mentality defined his leadership. Power without arrogance. Authority without distance. Victory without indulgence. He remained approachable. He remained grounded. He remained dangerous. Years passed. New kings rose. Old generals died. Pham Ngu Lao continued serving. He advised younger commanders. He helped shape military doctrine. He refined training systems. He strengthened frontier defenses. He was consulted on every major strategic decision. Despite not being born royal, he sat among princes. Despite being a former farmer, he was treated as family by the court. Yet he never forgot his origins. He visited his village often. He spoke with elders. He supported families of fallen soldiers. He funded repairs to temples and schools. He walked among rice fields quietly. Those who met him late in life described a man with calm eyes. Broad shoulders still strong, movements economical. Speech measured. He did not tell war stories. He asked about harvests. He did not discuss his victories. He discussed training schedules. Because Pham Ngu Lao did not live for glory. He lived for readiness. He understood something modern generals still struggle to grasp. War is not about destruction. It is about preservation. You fight so your people do not have to. You train so others can sleep. He had become more than a general. He had become a guardian, but even guardians grow old. And time eventually collects all warriors. In the winter of 1320, Pham Ngu Lao died. He was 65 years old. By modern standards, that is not old. But for a man who had spent decades riding through jungles, sleeping on frozen riverbanks, leading charges against the world's most powerful empire, it was a full lifetime. News of his passing spread quickly, from border garrisons, from farming villages, from river ports, from mountain towns. Soldiers removed their helmets. Farmers paused their plows. Court officials stood in silence. The king ordered 5 days of national mourning. Government affairs were suspended. This honor was almost never granted to someone outside royal blood. But Pham Ngu Lao had never been an ordinary subject. He had become something else. A pillar of the nation. People lined the roads as his funeral procession passed. Veterans wept openly. Villagers bowed. Children were lifted onto shoulders so they could see the man who had protected their future. He was buried without extravagance. No towering mausoleum, no golden monuments, just earth, just incense smoke, just quiet prayers. But what he left behind was larger than stone. His soldiers carried forward his training methods. His commanders taught his principles. His name entered textbooks. His poem, Thuat Hoi, was memorized by generations of students. Holding spear, guarding rivers and mountains through many years. My army's spirit roars louder than the stars. A man has not fulfilled his debt to honor and country, and still feels ashamed when hearing of ancient heroes. These were not the words of a conqueror. They were the words of a servant. A man who believed duty never ends. Cities later named streets after him. Schools taught his story. Temples preserved his memory. But perhaps the most powerful legacy was not institutional. It lived in quiet moments, in farmers training village militias, in commanders choosing restraint over brutality, in young recruits learning that leadership means eating last. Pham Ngu Lao became an archetype, the soldier who rose from nothing, the general who never lost, the warrior who never ruled. And in one corner of Vietnam, there is still a small rural road. Bamboo grows along its edge. Water buffalo pass slowly. It is said that long ago, a young man once sat there weaving baskets. He was poor. He was unknown. He was thinking about how to defend his country. That image remains because history is not always shaped in palaces. Sometimes it begins beside a dirt road, with a farmer, with a spear, with a mind that refuses to surrender. Pham Ngu Lao never built palaces. He never crowned himself king. He only defended his homeland. Fade to black.